All right, time for our Crime Time segment. We take a look at stories from around the country, bringing our own law enforcement experts with lots of experience to give us perspective and insight. Joining us tonight, retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant Dorsey started with the LAPD in 1980. She worked in patrol and specialized units, including gangs. She's the author of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. Also with us tonight, retired DEA Special Agent Ted Golden. Ted has 34 years of experience in law enforcement. He was with the Drug Enforcement Administration for 28 years and is also a former Memphis police officer. Ted, Sergeant, great to have you both here. Our first story comes to us from WKBW in Buffalo, New York. Gunshots heard during a church service.
For the first time in 3 months, members of the Well Buffalo Church in Gettsville gathered in person for service.
We're open for business, and from here until eternity, we will have church every Sunday.
But the service was cut short. While the pastor speaks, you can hear several loud bangs on the church's Facebook live stream. He leaves the stage, but the video continues. You can hear church members panic.
Where did that come from?
And call for police.
The Amherst Police Department received a phone call, numerous calls, reporting suspected shots fired at a church on Dodge Road in our town.
Amherst police sent their emergency response team. With help from state police, town of Tonawanda police, and ATF, police closed the street and cleared the building.
Nobody was injured. We weren't able to find any signs that any shots were fired within the building. Currently, the incident's under investigation.
Pastor Castronova updated his congregation on Facebook Sunday afternoon.
Those of you that might have heard or have been watching online, we had quite the traumatic experience here. Sounds of what sounded like gunshots. Even what we have ruled out completely 100% is it was not gunshots. We're not sure what it was.
Captain Chamberlain says there's no threat to the public.
We check the area. Obviously, we don't just check the inside the building. We check the neighborhood. We check the surrounding area to make sure that somebody's not hiding. At this point, I think the situation's calmed.
Police say they will continue investigating. Captain Chamberlain hopes the Facebook Live video will help them find some answers.
The Amherst police did an outstanding job here. Everybody's safe. This is a safe place, and we'll be back. We love you guys, and we thank you. God bless.
Happened in the first service since the shutdown. Right now, is there any way to determine if these were actually gunshots? Sergeant Dorsey, let me start with you.
Well, there's a couple of things you can do. And you know, in these days and times, most folks use automatic weapons. And when you use an automatic weapon, there's generally a discharge of a cartridge. And so you would check the area to see if there's any evidence of that. You know, I guess there could be some old schoolers out there with a revolver, but I kind of doubt it. And listen, this is just the time that we live in. So people are nervous and they have their head on a swivel, rightfully so. But let's remember, we're just a few weeks out of the 4th of July, and it's not uncommon for those, you know, who may have pyrotechnics to start celebrating a little early.
Yeah, Ted, I couldn't tell. My ear is not trained for that. Is there any way, you think, to determine if they were actually gunshots?
Well, you know, I'm an old project boy. Where I come from, when they slam the wood doors in the projects, it sounds like a gunshot. But it sounds like the noise itself was inside rather than coming from the outside because of the echo. And it may have been in the back area where the pastor was speaking off the stage left where he walked off. So the possibility existed it could have been gunfire, but the echo sounded a little bit different. So it's kind of hard to tell without being there yourself. Usually, you know, our ears are trained different because we fire hundreds of rounds. But when you hear a gunshot, normally in a contained area, it does echo, but you usually can tell where it came from.
Next story from WPIX in New York. Tainted milkshakes send some officers to the hospital.
Without having really any of the facts, just some of the initial circumstances, 2 different police unions came out boldly saying they believe this was intentional and that the shakes were spiked with bleach in an effort to hurt these police officers who are on their dinner break. But after an all-night investigation that pressed on into the morning, we learned from the chief of detectives that they believe this was a big accident and the shakes were not sabotaged as the unions had previously claimed. We saw overnight that 3 of the workers were taken away by the NYPD as part of this investigation. They were never charged, but they were just questioned. Sources say the 3 cops assigned to the 42nd precinct of the Bronx were in Lower Manhattan last night for a Black Lives Matter protest detail. Investigators then calling in the crime scene unit to look for any sort of evidence at the Fulton Center franchise to probe whether the cops were intentionally poisoned, which was claimed initially by the Detectives Union. The Patrolmen's Benevolent Association also initially believed that bleach was mixed into the milkshakes that sent them to the Manhattan emergency room for treatment.
It goes to show a police officer can never relax because of the atmosphere on the street. This will be investigated, and wherever that investigation leads, we'll find out soon enough. We're on the way to Bellevue now to see the police officers to make sure they're okay.
Shake Shack, in a statement on Twitter, said it was initially horrified by those initial reports, but then updated us saying they're working to get the full picture of what happened and they're relieved that the officers are okay. Yes, they have all been treated and released from the hospital, and police at this point still believe that there was some sort of cleaning agent that was accidentally still left inside of that shake machine, which mixed in with the product that got the officers sick.
All right, so how can you determine if the shakes were deliberately poisoned? You know, how do you figure it out if it was an accident, if it was done on purpose? Ted, let me start with you. And the first thing is, I guess it was just 3 officers, right? It was no one else that had these tainted shakes.
Well, most companies now have video surveillance of the area where people are working and paying for their items. So there's probably some video surveillance they can look at. And then too, I didn't hear anything about any other patrons being sick from it. So that would be something that we want to look at. But essentially, you try to look at the videos that are available and find out what the cleaning schedule was and who did it. And, you know, you may want to do a couple of background checks on some folks that might be questionable. But you just follow the investigation from where it is. You work backwards to try to figure out when was the last time they cleaned it, who cleaned it, and then what they used to clean it with, and what's a normal process or protocols for servicing the shake machine.
You know, Sergeant, the other part of this story, we heard the reaction from the head of the union. How careful do you think police have to be these days, right? You know, you're out on patrol, you got to pick up lunch, you pick up dinner, whatever it is. Do police have to be more careful in the environment we're in now?
I think officers have always been, fairly careful about where they go. And typically, I know in my experience, we would always go to places that were friendly. And I mean, give a discount, right? They like us coming there. We like going there. It's a win-win. But this guy, Pat Lynch, I refer to him affectionately as the Mouth. He's a provocateur. And there's lots going on right now across the country, particularly there in New York. 600 of their officers were taken out of a coveted plainclothes unit and put in uniform. And so I think he's just trying to garner sympathy and pretend as if somehow this was somebody who had ill towards the police officers and now they can't relax. And I think that when he finds out that this was a mistake, I promise you he probably won't come back and apologize, because that's just who Pat Lynch is.
When we come back, much more crime time, including, this is kind of like, it's like a way back Wednesday. It's not a throwback Thursday, but a way back Wednesday here on Crime Time. We're going to talk a little bit of Bronco chase. That's next. It was 26 years ago today that the most famous police chase in history was taking place, and I think it was during this hour. So let's take a look at it. The O.J. Bronco chase 26-year anniversary, as it's recalled by Tom Lang, the man who was on the phone with O.J. Simpson during the chase.
Somebody yelled out, "Hey, Simpson's on the TV," and I look up and there's this Bronco thing. And we're thinking, how could this get any worse? How could this get out of control? Because he was supposed to turn himself in and didn't. We'd sent some people out to Kardashian's house. a couple of squad cars with a lieutenant to interview those people. All they could tell us was Joe J was here with AC, and next thing we know, they're gone. It was chaos because no one was in control. That's what gets you in any homicide investigation. You need to have control. You need to know what's going on. You need to be able to communicate. And right now, we had absolutely nothing. We knew this guy was running, and all of a sudden, the sheriffs get on the phone. They were behind him. He says he's got a gun. Now we got a big problem. This isn't no longer about wanting to talk to him about a murder. It's wanting him to get that gun and throw the damn gun out the window, get rid of it. Or we're going to have more problems. I don't know what his state of mind is. I don't know. He's moaning like he hasn't slept in a week. When I finally get him on the phone, I never thought he'd pick up, by the way. Well, what does that tell you? It says he wants to talk to somebody. I say, that's good. The main thrust of my conversation is the gun. Okay, if it's a gun, you got to assume it's real. You got to assume it's loaded. You got to assume he can use it. Is he going to use it on himself? Is he going to shoot AC? Is he going to start shooting at the cops that are chasing him? Eventually, is he going to start shooting at all the looky-loos running up to the car when he gets back in Westwood? I don't know. All I care about is the gun. If he goes home or anywhere else and he steps out of that car with a gun, he's going to get nailed. Meanwhile, he's saying, all I do is want to go home. I want to get home. I want to do this. I want to be with Nicole. All this nonsense. I don't know if it's real or not, if he's playing me. It doesn't matter. If he's got a real gun, you play it like he's got a real gun and he's going to use it. Meanwhile, I signal somebody and I get SWAT, get him up to Rockingham. He says he wants to go home. SWAT takes off for Rockingham and they're going to set up at Rockingham in case he goes well. He decides that they're going home. The turnaround is made, and he's on his way home. We'll be waiting for him there. But again, if he gets out of the truck with a gun, they're going to drop him. He can't do that. I don't want him to shoot himself. I don't want him to shoot anybody. And he try to use his family, his kids, his this, his that, and he's just moaning here and moaning there. Is it an act? I don't know. I don't care. We take this all the way to his house. And he keeps picking up the phone. So that tells me, well, maybe we're in good shape with the gun, but you never know. But that's the reason that was conducted in the way that it was.
So, looking back, how dangerous was this chase? Let's bring back in our experts, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey and Ted Golden. Sergeant Dorsey, you're in L.A. How dangerous was this, and were you working that night?
I'm having a senior moment, Vinny. I don't know where I was when that happened, but listen,
everybody
I
else knows where they were at that moment.
Yeah, it wasn't that important to me. I don't know. I'm sorry. But here's the deal. It was a slow speed chase, and AC was driving, and so AC knew what was going on. The cops didn't, and that's why they were freaking, because they were being reactionary. My guess is, understanding his relationship with AC, he wasn't going to do anything stupid. Luckily, he wasn't behind the wheel in case his head wasn't on straight, so he didn't have to drive, deal with traffic, and think and talk on the phone and go through the machinations that he was going through. He's just in the back having a good time, maybe. AC's driving, and he's probably having some conversations with him as well. And so I know that this was probably unnerving because, again, the officers were responding, reacting to an unknown, something they couldn't predict, and we'd like to be in control.
Yeah, Ted, that's what Tom Lang was talking about. And he was so concerned about the gun. He just didn't know which way it was going to go. And if that car stops and he steps out and he's got the gun in his hand, he said they were going to take him out.
Yeah. They don't have a choice. I mean, you don't want to wait and get other people injured. The weapon is always a priority, especially when you see one. That's why you hear cops shout gun, 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 because everybody wants to let everybody else know that there's a weapon involved. And realistically, you have to think the worst in order to be able to survive any kind of situation where you don't have control. As law enforcement officers, we're hung up about control. Regardless of what the situation is, once we make decisions on how we want to handle a situation, we want to always be in control and always have somebody following our directions so that we know that we can go home.
And you know, Sergeant, the other thing that Tom Lang talked about were the looky-loos, because as this thing is being broadcast live, right, everyone knows what's happening, and now people are gathering on the sidelines like it's a sporting event of sorts.
You know, that was kind of the start of the whole, police chase. And we've seen many times since then where, people will drive through a neighborhood, they'll go to areas that are familiar, and friends will come out and they'll either cheer them on or try to get them to stop, because you just can't predict what's going to happen in a police pursuit with officers. And so, but everybody was having a good time. There were folks who were cheering for OJ. They just wanted to see him. They wanted to take pictures. And so I think probably a little bit of that good time was going on inside that Bronco as well, because we know how it ended. It ended peacefully.
We do.
Good job.
Thank goodness. And then there was the trial. Okay. Ted Golden, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. It's always great to have you on. Your expertise is appreciated, and your honesty as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity.